Franz-Michael Mellbin. Welcome to the Manila Times, and
Great to be here.
And in the Filipino tradition, I ask your permission to call you by your nickname, Dan, and of course you may call me Click.
I think that's great, and I love the Filipino nickname, so I had to get it.
Ambassador, you just arrived in Manila. Maybe you can just tell us what your marching orders are from your home office. What is the priority of Denmark in your embassy here in the Philippines?
Yes, I have very interesting exchange with my Prime Minister before I came. And as you know, that unfortunately in Europe we have a very difficult situation for the war in Ukraine, and lots of focus on that, of course being a NATO member. But I was very encouraged because my Prime Minister was very clear. He said, while all the attention currently is towards these, the future is still in the Far East.
Okay.
So a very strong message that Denmark is not going to forget about this region, and especially in the Pacific. We believe that the future world economic growth will happen, and we see Philippines as part of that. So it was a very clear message, and we will also see a follow-up to that. So we are developing currently an Indo-Pacific strategy like several other countries have. And just yesterday I sent in my recommendations on Twitter.
Wow. In terms of economic opportunities, is there a particular sector that you're looking at, or that Denmark is looking at? I know your country is good in many things, agriculture being one of them, and clean energy also. But is there a particular area that you see as that presents the most opportunity to start quickly or to scale up quickly?
Well, we definitely noticed the President's two main priorities, agriculture and energy. And we also think that there are good reasons that could be focused on those. So there is a lot to do here. But Denmark definitely has a lot to offer here. And I'm very happy that already in the short while I've been here, we've had 2 delegations come in with business people from Denmark to look at opportunities in agriculture, within the energy side, not least the renewable energy side. And we're very eager to work in these fields. And we've also seen during the last couple of months here, very large scale business within these 2 areas. Altogether, we have 6 areas lined up, which are my priorities working here. So we have agriculture, energy, which are definitely mainstays. We also have sustainability. So that's one of them. In the defense and security, which also will play an important role. We have the maritime sector, which is of course very important. And then digitization. Denmark is the leading country in the world when it comes to e-governance. And I've had some interesting conversations with the government already on this. And I think you have a very good secretary. We're working with this issue, so I see a lot of opportunity also in this area. So those are sort of the 6 areas where Denmark is very strong, but fortunately also all areas where there's a lot to do.
Yes. Were any of these discussed during the recent EU-ASEAN meeting? Was there an opportunity to do any discussions on these on the sidelines with the Philippines?
In the run-up to the meeting, there was intense discussions on several of these sectors. The idea was that the President and Prime Minister of Denmark and the President would meet in Brussels, but then unfortunately we had change of government just during the summer, so the meeting didn't happen. But we'll follow up, and 3 of the areas that we were planning to discuss, and which we will now follow up on, were exactly energy, agriculture, and the maritime sector. So definitely basis for continued discussion between Philippines and Denmark. But sadly, it didn't happen in Brussels.
Well, I'm sure that will happen soon, because I think the Philippines is the country coordinator of ASEAN to EU, so there may be other opportunities for meetings representing EU, but maybe would be an opportunity for us to talk more.
Yeah, they definitely will. I will be following up here. I have a great meeting calling in Copenhagen. It's also following up there. And we do hope to see more political exchanges also.
Right.
So missed opportunities this time, we'll be back next time.
I want to take up clean energy first, because you have an extensive background in that. What do you see what do you see as opportunities here in the Philippines? I was mentioning earlier that the Philippines has been for many decades now saying basically they want to increase their share of renewables in the energy mix, but unfortunately, because the fossil fuels have been so cheap over the past decades, even as the share of renewables is growing, the share of coal and others are growing much faster. So the share in the energy mix of renewables is actually shrinking, and it's supposed to be, I think, around 30%, by 2030 or something like that. Maybe based on your work in that area, maybe what you've seen also maybe in your country, what are some of the things that maybe would be good for the Philippines to look at in terms of strategic policy approach for renewables? Because the intent is there. It's just the execution seems to be falling short every time we measure it. So.
Well, first and foremost, I think this is an extremely important area because the Philippine people are suffering from very high energy prices.
Yes.
And the next high prices in all of only Singapore has higher, and that's not a country which has very good opportunities for generating its own energy.
Right.
So it should be much different here. And you also have energy scarcity, and you have areas where you have irregular
baseload,
and brownouts. So there's really a need to do something, and we need to take some. Now, that's the bad news. So the good news is this can be solved.
Okay.
And what has happened, which is very, very important, is that in 2018, the economic fault lines crossed between fossil fuels and renewables.
Okay.
And renewables just become intrinsically cheaper than fossil.
Okay.
It's actually cheaper than anything else.
Right.
You can't make any energy cheaper than renewables. So because you have a young population, growing population, you have growing economy, you're going to need a lot more energy moving forward. Right. So there's a great opportunity now to choose the best kind of energy that is the cheapest, the cheapest price to consumers, and which can be implemented fastest. So this is also very important. What is time to market? And the fastest way to build new power is solar. We can make a utility-sized solar plant within a couple of years.
Okay.
And the next task is being onshore wind.
Okay.
You can make a utility-sized wind farm within about 3 to 4 years. And the next step down the ladder is then the sea-based, or ocean-based wind. Okay. Which takes sort of 5-6 years if it's near coast, and it will take about 7 years from this point if you go further outwards. So renewables is a way of tackling a lot of these issues. Okay. Now, the challenge is that the gates are not just restricted to getting somebody to have a big utility and coverage to the system. Okay. You need more structural changes because you need to upgrade your grid. Okay. You need to have a grid system. Yeah. You need to have a better distribution of when those are available to different places. A better management of that. So it's a multifaceted thing. That does boil down to what is needed. Okay. And what is needed is structural reform in the energy sector. Okay. That is what has been lacking. And that's going to be the most difficult part. Because if you want to do structural change in any part of the society, you need also to build a certain social consensus around why we can change the way we used to do things. But the good story here is for the Philippines. You are not best in the not the best in solar, not the best in hydro, not the best for biomass,
Okay.
not the best for geothermal, not the best for waste to energy.
Okay.
But you are pretty damn good at all of them.
Okay.
And that's amazing because
Okay.
you can build a very robust renewable energy system.
With a diverse mix of renewables.
Tapping into
Yeah.
that diversity, because what you want to do in modern energy policy is you want to diversify. You
Okay.
don't want to tap into only one.
Okay.
You want to diversify because then you can make a healthy mix, get a more robust and resilient system.
Right.
You also get the advantage that some sources of energy are very intermittent, like solar. The solar during the day, there's simply no solar.
Right.
during the
Right.
night.
Right. Right.
That's the way
Right.
it works. Wind is a little more resilient because the towers are so gigantic
Right.
now. So, it may blow more or less, but
Mhm.
it always blows
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It can blow a lot in the night too,
Right.
so sort of a step up the ladder. But you also have things like geothermal and biomass. They can run 24/7.
Mm.
And do things with what you call sector coupling. We do that a lot in Denmark. It lowers prices for consumers and industry tremendously. And sector coupling is when you don't just look at power production isolated, but you put it together with energy storage solutions for residential use and for industrial use. So Denmark, it's cold, so you need centralized heating.
Right.
But here it's
Warm and
warm,
humid.
but you can do centralized cooling.
Okay.
So instead of these, that you have this being separate unit,
Right.
you could have using water.
Right.
You could do centralized cooling systems where you pipe cold water into
Okay.
people's homes,
Okay.
and then you draw the cooling from that.
I see.
And one place where I work, where they have done this for very large scale, is in the UAE, Dubai,
Okay.
Abu Dhabi, have some of the largest centralized cooling systems in the world.
Interesting.
And as I said, it lowers consumer prices. But it's a new kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this is where we need this structural change.
Right.
How are we going to do it? So I'm very optimistic when it comes to government's new policies. Danish industry is very optimistic. Danish investors are very optimistic. And with the announcement that foreign investors can come in and have
100% ownership.
of solar and wind farms, this actually immediately triggered large-scale Danish interest. We
Okay.
already had one company who has handed over letters of intent for 2.3 gigawatt
Wow.
offshore.
Offshore wind.
Offshore wind.
Yeah.
With a fairly short timeline. We were going into more intense discussions with government on, how can that happen?
Yeah.
Because guys saying
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
it needs to happen first. But these people are ready to put up wind energy on a very short notice in this country and invest billions. So it's an exciting story. I think we're going to see a lot more corporations from Denmark in the Philippines.
That's great.
And it's great equipment. It's your resources.
Yeah.
Wind, it's your
It's
fire,
right there. Yeah.
It's your heat in the ground. It's your
Yeah.
biomass.
Yeah.
We can do amazing stuff.
So we need to do the structural changes. You said we're good on the legal front. What about the financing? But what are some of the best practices that you've seen in other countries in terms of approaching the financing part of it, just to have more, encourage more companies to have a look at this source of energy?
There's a lot of experience now around the world. In Denmark, we used feed-in tariffs
Okay.
for a while to get it up and running.
Does that work? Did it work in your country?
It worked well, but we also made mistakes like
Okay.
having too high rates. And
I think
too low.
that was the experience
Yeah.
here, that it was made
Yeah, you
made it
think
expensive.
about that.
Yeah.
And it could make it very expensive. But there is international experience now on
Okay.
balance that. There are also other ways to support the initial phase. Now, a lot of it is about how much burden do you put on those who are coming in with new technology?
Okay.
And how much will consumers or off-takers or grid managers or the state take? What we did in Denmark was something that I can see you all kind of do now in the Philippines, which I think is an interesting good way. If you're going to ask all consumers to pay a little extra for the electricity to upgrade the grid.
Okay.
And this is what we did in Denmark. So people paid and are still paying, by the way, because we're still, we will go past 100% renewable.
Okay. Wow.
Before 2030.
Wow.
So we are already at a very high point.
Right.
All in. And become a very large exporter of electricity to our region in the world with renewables. But basically we asked consumers to pay for the upgrade of the grid. And that made it a lot cheaper for those who were providing solar or wind, which are predominating ways that we have intermittent utility-sized renewables to get on the grid and sell that electricity to market price. You can also have market price incentives like privileged access to the offtake.
Okay.
You can do different things, but I don't think that's difficult. That's just a question of sitting down with a calculator and some people who have the experience, finding what would be the optimal way to improve it.
Right. Do you see any other obstacles? You said the law already triggered a lot of interest. Do you see any other obstacles that maybe that we should look at next, just to really open the field wide open?
I think the challenge here in the Philippines is one of the way Philippine politics works.
Okay.
So if you go back, you actually institute some great energy policies back in 2001.
Okay.
If you go back in the history books, wow, there were great policies instituted. And the idea with those policies was actually to diversify the input into the grid system. But what happened was that nothing happened.
Okay.
So the incumbents
Okay.
and the complicated structure of your energy system made it virtually impossible for new actors to enter the market.
Okay.
So I think it's very important for the Philippines also to mobilize. That's why I talked about the social capital before.
Okay.
There needs to be broad-based understanding amongst all actors. The Philippines needs to change. They need to be able to harvest their own resources. The consumers need to see a very different price level and have more options. The country needs more resilience. You had a scare here a couple of years ago with Indonesian coal.
Oh yes, they said they weren't going to sell it.
They weren't going to sell it anymore.
Or anyone.
And that would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Make the nation stronger. Build a consensus about the Philippines really needs this time around. Where the opportunities there, let's change things. Make life better for people. Make your industry, more competitive. Strengthen the nation. All those things come together when you start using your own energy. Use what Philippines can do more.
Again, just going back to best practices, right? Has it worked? Would it work better, or have you seen it work better if it was the government putting up the money to develop these things? Because a lot of people are, over here, they're talking about different financing schemes, even now, the sovereign wealth fund. But, they as an alternative to that, they mentioned private-public partnerships and things like that. But the thing in the Philippines is that we don't have power subsidies like Vietnam and other countries. They say our electricity retail costs more expensive. But it doesn't have that burden on government like it does on other countries. But which one works better? From what you've seen around the world. What's the ideal thing that you think would work in the Philippines?
Commercial. We don't need to pour a lot of public money into it.
They're going to be certainly willing.
To set up these things. What you need to do is to think about how to finance the grid. and how you're going to manage the grid. And there may be a cost to that.
Okay.
There may be a cost. You're going to have to find out how to do it. And I understand, the idea is let's get consumers to pay through long-term sort of a slice every month. Then you can finance it that way. I don't know if it's going to be enough or what, but that's something to think carefully about.
Okay.
How do you do that? But when it comes to people coming in and putting down money, you can imagine my own small country so far away. I think even a lot of Filipinos wouldn't be able to point it out on a map. Is willing to put billions of dollars just because you open for 100%
Right.
You can imagine there is a lot of money.
Well, I imagine your companies are looking at the region, right?
Yes, they
So,
are.
and of course, we are competing with the different countries in this area.
You are.
What I'm interested is in what would make you look at us more than, let's say, Indonesia or Malaysia or even China. What would we need to do to make us more prominent or more attractive to those looking in this area with lots of technology to invest into, the financing to go with it? What do we have to do on our part?
Well, that has to do a little about what is it that will make the Philippines more attractive for investors in general.
In general, that's true.
In
That's
general.
true.
And it's very easy. I mean, I get two questions.
Okay.
What about the red tape and what about governance?
Okay.
I mean, it's that simple.
Okay.
If you want to be more attractive, those are the two areas you need to focus on, because this is what people worry about.
Okay.
They see lots of opportunities,
Right.
young population,
Right.
access to workers. There's the language, which is easily
And then they get to see how
accessible.
difficult it is.
And so you have a great reputation
Yeah.
in a lot of areas. But you have a serious issue with red tape, and you have a serious issue with government, and people don't like that. They worry about it, and everybody, who comes in with money,
Right.
is the upfront question.
Right.
What about that? And this is also when it comes to renewable energy. You could see a very rapid, large-scale deployment of renewable energy in this country with this new legislation that's coming into place.
Right.
But that has to be translated into action. You need to see licensing come fast and move forward, and you need to see people being certain that, okay, if this entity or agency said yes and did your certificate, then you go out with your trucks and whatever. And then somebody else pops up and says, well, by the way, you also need
Because you mentioned Singapore. In Singapore, you can open that corporation and dissolve it on the same day. Here, I think in Quezon City, which is actually, I think, the best one-stop shop process, it still takes about 35 days.
That's a lot.
I could imagine how frustrating that might be. Is that an issue?
These things are.
That's an issue.
It is an issue.
But that has to be...
And it's an increasingly important issue for the Philippines to get right.
Okay.
Because the Philippines has so much potential.
Okay.
But it also has potential 5 years ago.
Yes.
It had great potential 10 years ago. And great potential 15 years ago. So let's change that.
Right.
Let's, as the government has said, we want to be partners. I said that to the president. I said, we want to be partners on your quest to change this country and move it forward. And we can be partners, on government digitization, for example, which is a great way both to tackle some of the red tape issues, but it can also help a lot on the governance issues side. So the tools are there, but if you want to translate potential into opportunity and action, then there's still a missing.
What about the governance part? You said that's a major issue as well. What specifically on the governance part needs to be addressed? Or maybe if you think of some anecdotes where governance became an issue or a stumbling block for an investor coming in who was already interested.
Well, licensing is typically a big problem because people use that as a pressure point to extract, concessions or cash or whatever. Sometimes it's maybe not direct for the benefit of the people holding back, but then some of their friends or other reasons, or it can be just competitors who have more sway and use that, as incumbents to block competition and things like that. People feel that this happens and they worry about it because they feel that the ability to regress is very small or limited or it's risky and expensive. So there's work to be done here. And it's just creating that smooth business environment would lift the entire business prospects of this country. I have a great office in DC. It's up on whatever.
Nice office.
Yeah, nice office. A high building. I overlook sort of part of the city, a mixed part of the city. I see some of the new high rises and new residential, but I also
see Old Taguig.
Yeah, it's a more interesting, colorful areas. So it's a good picture of Manila in many ways and of what's happening in the Philippines. But I always tell this because I was ambassador to Japan, back in 68. Japan and the Philippines were equally rich. And it should look like Tokyo out there. But it doesn't look like Tokyo I worked with. And that's, not because of lack of potential. It was because opportunity was lost. Let's recapture that. We have a great future. I'm a very strong believer in the Philippines, and I really hope, that the government will do everything it's saying it wants to do. It does that, you're going to be in a much, much better situation.
And for the following governments to retain the policy.
Yeah, you need to retain that. If you look at the energy sector, that's very interesting because one of the problems for the Philippines was you didn't have a consistent energy policy, and that's
kept changing.
Kept changing new ideas. Have some stability, you can go far.
Well, at least as you said, there's interest, so it's up to us now to seize that.
There's a lot of interest.
Moving on to agriculture, so that's another area you're looking at, and your country is very strong in that sector. But again, it's such a big area. Is there a specific sector within agriculture that is ripe, you think, for a partnership between your country and ours, or that would be ripe for attracting Danish companies to look at?
The two main areas that I see personally is the dairy sector.
And
the hog sector. And there's a lot of work to be done in both areas. So I'd say those are probably the two that I feel have the greatest potential when it comes to Danish technology and ways of doing things. But there is a more underlying challenge, which is the low productivity of the overall low productivity. That's because agriculture sector is heavily undercapitalized.
It's almost the backyard.
It is. It's subsistence farming, and this holds productivity back. So there are sectors where we've had Danes come in with some interesting projects. One of the more well-known ones is this line hog farms on Palawan. You've heard about it.
I know.
The CEO who is a Dane, Christian Ida, he just was awarded the Philippine Sustainability Award among CEOs, so that was a nice recognition of his work. But he's now suggesting ways to dramatically improve productivity in the coconut sector, which is where he is. So this is not a Danish traditional sector.
I would say that
coconut farming is not
palm
great,
trees in Denmark.
but it tells a very interesting story about Philippine agriculture, which is, it is very much about thinking different about how do you run capitalized agriculture. And how can you increase productivity in your agriculture? The Philippines has become dependent on food imports to a certain extent. It has a large food vulnerable population. Far too many Filipinos, are getting not enough or wrong foods, and we're causing stunting of children in certain areas, which is tragedy both to them but to the nation also overall. And so, just the way you organize your agricultural sector could change your ability to produce food yourself. It comes from being export. So in the hog sector, which is closer to what Denmark can do, there's a model farm that has been built here in Luzon, somewhat north of Manila, to show, if you do all the things right, how can you both not be affected by swine flu, but also increase productivity a lot. So a daily sow on average will produce 26 piglets.
Okay.
And an average Filipino sow will produce 16 piglets.
Okay.
And
is it because your sow is much bigger, or it's just a bit more?
They're more happy about piglets.
More prolific. Trying to find a word for.
I'm not sure what I want to call it, but the piglet are actually coming out fast, and that's it's a very simple metric that everybody can understand.
Yeah, but yes,
it's just it's a scale of jump in productivity, that makes you think, wow, what can happen here?
I think, but I've been to, I've done some livestock farming myself, and the problem here is just to get the breeding stock.
Yes.
And
I would have had 2 days.
I would imagine that's the same for hogs, right?
Yeah. So we had 2 Danish companies come out. I think we say them out as worthy when it comes to.
I think your biggest competitor here is Australia.
So, yeah.
You said distance,
But we had, if you want to know who's the great grandfather
of the
dog, you buy a Danish DNA because he can tell you. And so that's how well charted it is in Denmark. And we had 2 hog breeding.
But the policy challenge there, and this was written about by one of our columnists who's into hog farming, was that I guess there was something wrong with the execution here that limited the good breeding stock to the more politically connected, and so the farther you are, then you got the lower quality stock, right? And then the normal ones that's available to most Filipino hog farmers are the least one. I think the 3rd generation one that produces only the 16 piglets per sow.
That can be an issue.
So is that a matter of just like maybe the numbers, or is just maybe maybe it has to do with I suppose distribution as well, right?
It also has to do with how are you sort of managing your hog stock. So one problem was, of course, that trying to spread a lot, and that became a big problem for a lot of people, including a lot of subsistence farmers, which were badly hurt by this. So it was kind of a tragedy that unfolded in slow motion. Now, one thing is the breeding stock, but also just the feeds. Like
the feeds,
if you look at what you're feeding,
it of course impacts the productivity.
Productivity, and feed is your biggest expense when you do hog farming.
Okay,
it's your biggest single expense is the feed. So there's not enough knowledge amongst hog farmers on what to feed, but also how much to feed. So you're feeding too much at certain times or too little at others, and it all has impacts. So it's a whole value chain. And that's why this capitalizing the industry would bring a lot, because once you start to concentrate more capital, you can also concentrate more knowledge, and that is important. It's not just about thinking you're doing the right thing. There are actually science and experience.
But I was going to say, does the scale matter in that case, or you just have to have a good system, even though it's backyard, it can be as productive as
It's a good question because there's also a social issue to that.
Okay, yes.
Could you just say, okay, we're going to make 10,000 large-scale pig farms,
right?
And all pig farming is going to happen there,
right?
And that's obviously, there would be political consequences.
There's some climate change
whatever
issue there as well.
So there could be that also. So I think that you look at different sectors, there are different ways to approach that.
Okay.
But Christian Eide-Møller has a very interesting idea, and he says, you need intermediate parties that can be used for capitalization.
Okay.
And those can still work with the small farmers. But the small farmers will never be able to access the capital necessary directly.
Right.
Because the banks...
So they have to organize.
Yeah, it has to be organized one way or the other.
Right.
And what you could do is you can have some large units that sort of become the intermediaries, and they then employ small-scale farmers to work for them. And they also become the hubs of and disseminators of knowledge and guide and hand out, better plans or better hog DNA or whatever. I think that's a very interesting idea. It's how he built his own coconut farm in the South of Caroline, difficult area, together with indigenous peoples there, who are now, employed and have raised living standards for those people. So it's about structural changes, and I think the Philippines will have to be innovative about what is happening in the agriculture sector, because more of the same will not create new results.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, we need more farmers doing this.
You need better farming.
Yeah, you need farmers to do things differently.
Right. Yeah.
Change is difficult.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't come easy
it is.
to people, so there needs to be a process around that. But again, I see great opportunity because of the potential we have. The Philippines should be exporting food if you ask me. It shouldn't be exporting.
It should be. Well, you also mentioned the maritime sector, and your country is a major employer of Filipino seafarers, and there's been this issue that really, we started raising it several months back, or even a year back ago, that has to do with the certification, the safety certification.
Good for you. It's an important question.
It's picked up again because there's a new president, and because the president had traveled to Brussels for that ASEAN EU meeting. But sadly, there seems to be a confusion on what the problem exactly is. I mean, even in the Philippines, for a while, they were tossing the problem to the Marina, which is the Maritime Industry Authority, and then back to CHED, and then it went back and forth for a while. I even had a friend who, I think at one point, had spent like $2 million on a simulator, only to find out that things changed and he doesn't need a simulator anymore. But he really made the investment. So, but maybe from your perspective, I think it's better coming from you. What exactly is the problem that I know it's not a simple one, and I'm putting you on the spot here. But what is the issue that our government needs to look at in terms of our seafarers? Safety and certification, and I think eventually placement, European flag bearers.
Well, I have to say, Denmark is very, very happy, and the people very happy with their, maritime professionals, and it would be a great loss to the industry, but certainly also to the Philippines if that's not an option anymore. And because the European certification is the worldwide certification.
Right.
That's the standard. It's the standard. So those seafarers are not going to go anywhere else if it drops out of the European system. So it's a very, very important issue.
So that's a point. That's an interesting point, because it's not just seafarers on board European flag carriers. It's everyone.
In effect, it would be like dropping out of the
exactly.
system. That's what's going to happen. In practice.
Right.
So it would be a tremendous loss. Anyway, so what has happened is that the Philippines has been warned about this for many years. You have too many substandard maritime schools because they are run as a business.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with running a school like a business.
Right.
But there's something wrong if your business is, I don't invest in teachers, I don't invest in equipment, I don't invest in upgrading the curriculum, but I do ask people to pay me so I can write a certificate that will allow them to get a job.
Okay.
And then that becomes like a great business,
Right.
and people are not interested in investing in that business or elsewhere. And then you get substandard maritime professionals from that, which are then sent out into the world. Now, this is the core of the issue. So you have some great schools who are producing, well qualified, highly professional maritime professionals that the world needs and wants because they like to work with Filipinos. It's great and proud of the maritime workforce. But you also have these other schools which are just
bring them down.
Yeah, it's money. And
Diploma mills.
Yeah, they need to be closed down.
Okay.
It's very simple. And there are countries, you're not the only country in the world that has this problem,
Okay.
I'm not going to make others. There's some others, not necessarily in the maritime sector, but in other sectors who also,
Sure.
have this kind of industry. And of course, you can't then trust the certificate anymore. So this is the core of the issue. Now, through my work here, and it's something that I did engage in, I've been meeting with the department and with the Marina to talk about these things. And at the core is that there needs to be political will to shut down these businesses.
Okay.
So the bad schools need to stop.
Okay.
And what has happened previously, and this is why it's been such an ongoing process, is previous governments have promised they would stop these, underperforming schools, and some of them were stopped. But then the next day they just reopened. There's a new sign on the door. The school reopens. It can't work like that.
Okay.
And meanwhile, there's more pressure from the EU side because the EU doesn't just certify Filipino seafarers. They certify
everyone.
seafarers from all over the world.
Yeah.
And they actually shut down, some other countries, not to mention any names here.
Yes.
But those countries are looking at the EU and, asking what is going on here? Why are you shutting down us from the system while, these people are getting away with this, and it's going to cause us to do wrong. So it's become crunch time.
Okay.
And it is solvable for the government. There is action that is needed.
Okay.
Get this right.
Okay.
For the sake of the nation, for the Filipino seafarers,
Okay.
but also for Danish shipping companies. We want to work with Filipino seafarers.
Right.
It's a good, reliable part of our work. And basically they perform well. There is one victim group that I think gets too little attention, and that is all these Filipinos who, because they want to invest in their future, they want to invest, in education and get a chance and make a decent living, and they are paying good money and getting cheap.
Yes.
This is
They're not getting the training and education that they paid for.
I think it's a little sad that sometimes this it becomes a big government thing and certification in the EU institution and Filipino government. But there's a human dimension to this.
Yes.
People are some of these people, they have saved for years, or their whole family is investing. Let's make sure that our eldest son gets this chance and it can be an opportunity. They deserve that.
Have you had a chance to look at, the number of schools that need to be closed down? I mean, is there a percentage?
I don't.
Is there a ballpark? It's not half or anything like that.
I don't want to
go into that.
I'm
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
There is a certification body in Europe.
Okay.
EMSA.
Yes.
And
the European Maritime Safety Authority or something.
And you're gonna,
right.
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 But I can say this: it's a real problem.
Right. Well, that's sad. So it's just to clarify, it's not just really because somebody was saying it's not just the 50,000, right? But it's not just the 50,000 who are direct. Well, they're even saying that the 50,000 was just the officers aboard the European vessels. It's everybody else. That's the 600,000 pool of sea, right? They're all going to be affected. You were mentioning that there's a time element to this. It was it was urgent many years ago, and then it would become news for a while, and it would disappear, and then it would come back again and disappear. But you said that there's some time element that's crucial now. What's different? You were saying
because actually the EMSA didn't extend the certification in December.
Okay.
And that doesn't take effect immediately, but if that doesn't change, I mean, if there's no new decision, it's going to run out.
Okay.
So this is why I'm happy to see that the President took time to also address this while he was in Brussels. I think when I meet with authorities such as Marina, the Department, with various ministers, and not just those who are directly involved, but also some of the other ministries, secretaries of who are responsible for these areas. There's a lot of attention and awareness about the seriousness of the problem, so it gives me some hope.
So you're satisfied that people are moving to, I mean, on our side,
I'm
are moving.
satisfied people know there's a problem. but it will be about implementation.
Right. So, but the implementation, is that as clear cut as closing specific schools, or is there something less drastic than that?
Well, as you said, it's a set of issues.
Okay.
And, things that have to happen.
Right.
It's really also because it is a certification issue. It's all about how certificates work. It's somewhat technical.
The process. Yes. Okay.
So it's more complex than that. But I think the Philippine government, fortunately, is alerted. It's very aware of it, as we just discussed, and I think that the knowledge that there is a real problem that needs real action is there, and I really hope that we're going to get there, and we are willing to support that process. The European Union has been very clear. Denmark wants to cooperate closer with the Philippines. This has also been part of my discussions while I've been here, when also discussing this issue. We want to work closer with the Philippines because there's opportunity for the Philippines in this. It's not just to say this old age, there's opportunity in crisis. But there is one opportunity here, and fortunately I see some Filipinos sort of waking up to this, and that is there is a drive towards decarbonization of the shipping sector.
Okay.
So there are some targets. European Union is very ambitious here. The Maersk company, largest shipping company in the world, has said we want to be carbon neutral I think it's 2035 or maybe it's even 2030. Very ambitious goal. And to do that, there's new technology coming into the shipping industry. And that the Philippines can capture part of that, make that part of your curriculum. Okay. What about these new decarbonization technologies? Now we're revising the sector, we're looking at certification. What are people supposed to be taught and things like that? Make it part of the curriculum, make Filipino maritime professionals the forefront of being able to manage this transition that the shipping industry will go through. And maybe it won't go through that, in a short while, it will be a more longer process. But, first movers have a great advantage in business. You're the first mover.
But is there also opportunity maybe for some of your maritime schools to partner with some of the local maritime schools just for the purpose of maybe upgrading their, I'm sure there's a lot of things that's wrong. You mentioned curriculum maybe deficient. I'm sure also as usual with our entire education system, the teacher training is also
maybe an issue there also.
Right. I mean, it's not just one, right? And of course, there's the facilities and the other things, but Is there opportunity, or is there been any interest maybe in maybe a school-to-school partnership between Danish schools and Philippine schools? Is that something that's been looked at, or is there opportunity there?
Denmark doesn't have.
Oh, you don't have.
We don't have privately owned schools, so it's
Okay.
government running the maritime education
Okay.
in Denmark. So you can see from Europe, and there are a number of European schools here. There are actually some European countries that have, big business interests because they are running schools here.
I see.
So they have that as investment. So there is an interest from the European side to that. Denmark is very happy to offer to support some of this work, but it's typically the ship owners who come in and support that, and that does happen. And we do support Philippines and Filipino maritime professionals in various ways. So I'll give you one interesting example because it says a lot about Denmark, but also about the relationship between Denmark and the Philippines. The Danish ship owners, they negotiate with the Philippine unions here, shipping seafarer unions. And in that negotiation, actually, the Danish seafarers unions also participate.
Okay.
So there's a tripart, and that is an attempt to, bring additional knowledge and leverage to the table from all sides, allowing, Filipino seafarers to get better welfare and protection that they should have, and which is applicable to their trade.
That's interesting.
And this is an area where we would like to work more closely also with the Philippine government when it comes to the IMO, where we would like to see the Philippines also be supportive of decarbonization efforts for climate change. But where Denmark also sees an opportunity to work for improved welfare and protection for Filipino seafarers, because COVID showed that in spite of the IMO setup and the seafarer regulations that they are behind, there are gaps in the existing rule set, and those gaps sadly became very, very obvious during the crisis and affected tens of thousands of Filipino seafarers who were stuck forever on ships, and they couldn't get, you couldn't reman, or you couldn't actually access the ship you were supposed to be sailing on. Create a lot of issues. So there's a scope for improvement for sure. And what about access to medical facilities during COVID, which also became a problem?
Well, your country seems very interested in individual welfare. In a larger context, I think you're also interested in human rights, right?
Yes.
So on that front, what are some of the things that you're working on in the Philippines on improving problems there?
But there is, unfortunately, there is an issue of human rights in the Philippines, and your own sector, journalism is one of them that are affected. And there's a lot of concern amongst journalists when it comes to issues like red tagging, etc. And for good reasons, unfortunately, for good reasons. So these are challenges where there's an ongoing discussion between the European Union, and Denmark is part of that, and the Philippines, and where we want to see improvements. Now, there are some positives and some negatives here, so I'll sort of cover both parts. First of all, I think that the new government has shown signs that it wants to improve in this area, and those are very important signals. And just say to the government, very clear, keep up the good work. More is needed, but it's sort of a good start. Good start. And we're very happy to see that. So there needs to be political will change, and we interpret this as political will change these things. So that's a positive. And I also think we've seen in certain high-profile cases that we saw positive action. This is more symbolic, but symbols also count, matter, taken up, and they sort of shape the perception. Now, and this is important for the Philippines because, unfortunately, because of the hard criticism that was on the human rights side on the previous administration, the reputation and the standing of the Philippines on issues related to human rights, dropped a lot.
Right.
And some of that may have been unfair. Mm-hmm. Some of it was certainly also narrative facts. And that is something that Philippines needs to change for its own sake. Because first and foremost for the sake of human rights, its own population, and living in a country where you feel safe and secure, and trust the authorities and things like that. But also because it has an impact, a wider impact on the Philippines leverage internationally, on foreign investors, likelihood.
I was going to say, we're hoping to renew the GSP Plus status in the EU.
Yeah.
Is the human rights, the human rights, will that be a concern in the negotiating discussion? Is that totally separate?
It is.
I think our position should be separate, but I think Europeans have a different view.
We have a different view, and I think what is very important to be aware of here, and I think my impression is totally as well aware of this, is that his plus is the that the Philippines has, which is very important. And will also have an impact on the extreme strategy data the European other associations was not translated. So human rights plays an integral role there, and the European Parliament has to approve an extension of GSP Plus. So they have a say. So governments have a say. European governments have a say. European Parliament, and the Parliament has issued a statement saying they don't think that the human rights situation in the Philippines calls for an extension of GSP Plus. So you say the Philippines comes from a position behind the curve right now, because it needs to convince Parliament, the European Parliament, that the Philippines, should have an extension in their human rights situation, improve in a way that should allow for it. And that's why it's very, very important. Now, I would like to say, you said, we made this clear that it should be part of the trade talks, but when we talk about human rights and GSP Plus, I think this is something that often gets lost. And sometimes people will say, it's the European Union trying to impose its ideas or whatever.
Well, that's one. I think the other thing is that sometimes what reaches the European Union has is not sometimes the same appreciation of the problem that we see here.
Yeah, but let me address both.
Yeah.
First of all, is this something we are imposing? No, it's not.
Okay.
If you read what are we doing when we do GSP Plus, we are asking the Philippines to live up to the conventions you have signed.
Right.
We didn't bring new conventions to the Philippines saying, do this. Right. We are looking at, you made these promises to the world, even at the UN and elsewhere.
And therefore we have to live by it.
Do it. Do what you have promised your own people. Do these things that you promised yourself.
The other point. The other point was, like you mentioned, the journal. Certainly, there's a big problem with but I'm not sure if that's probably because we have a platform. But you look at the Philippines, for instance, there are more people in the more judges and lawyers who are killed in journalists, and nobody's talking about it. And that's legitimate.
I think that, that's really,
and unfortunately, they don't have a media platform to air them.
I agree. And I think just want to speak to that. The authority and you're right. And now I'm a lawyer myself. I don't want to differentiate between lawyers and judges, but of course, it's really worrying that judges are at risk.
Yes.
And I do think that from the rule of law and all kinds of things. So you need to do something also in this area. So there are several problems. There are some politics that sometimes get lost. You mentioned this, what is the reputational side of this? I think that the attempts that has been on the government side, it has been going on the way the pretext to solve some of the moral is commendable.
Yeah.
There isn't a real attempt to.
There's still a lot to do. So it's a good start.
But there is a start, there's an idea, and in a lot of countries, this would be where a lot of focus would go, and maybe sometimes there's too little focus on this very important issue. It's very important, people are directly from the nation, but it's also in itself of the peace for your country and avoiding certain violence is really important. So I think all kinds of progress that needs to happen in that area is positive. There is, it takes time. Of course. I work with peace myself, so but it steps in the right direction. I think sometimes people tend to forget that you are a real democracy. People
a very noisy one at that.
The people and Filipinos voted for guardians of office. That's actually a good thing. It's better than this. It's great. And elections create new political realities.
Right.
You get elected, things happen around the person. These things are for real. And they are very important and very positive. And if you look around the region, see here and come up with ideas, but everybody knows what it looks like. It's not, great out there. It's very nice. So yes, the Philippines has everything going for it, but it doesn't have to be a Philippines we work on. As I said, very happy about positive signals we're seeing from the government side, and let's see more.
Right.
Because more work is needed, and with the GSP Plus, you're coming from behind the curve. The government is aware of this. I think they gave good attention to it also while they were in Brussels.
Is there a timetable? What's the timetable for
this before the end of
before the end of next year?
There needs to be a decision. So there's also a fairly short time to work on this.
A window.
Yeah, it's a window, and there will be people who are, very critical, and rightly so. That's probably going to be very difficult, even with the best of wills from any government, a year from now to be able to say, we solved all the issues.
Right.
So the will to do what you can and show that standing up is not very difficult.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
I'm good, sir. The ambassador covered everything.
She's too busy buying chocolates.
Christmas is such a wonderful occasion here, and it's just we had our Christmas party at the embassy the other day, and it was a great party. I loved games and fun and karaoke and I don't know what, and everybody had to suffer my poor singing voice. But the Filipino staff lived up to the reputation of the rock stars.
You don't only have just a nickname like a Filipino does, but you also have the singing.
The singing urge, not the singing talent.
Ambassador, is there anything else you you'd like to bring up or to discuss, something that maybe we haven't discussed?
Well, I think maybe just a little on the geopolitics.
Sure, yeah, the
No,
Pacific.
it's absolutely.
I'm sorry, yeah,
but
we started off with
I'm
that.
sorry, I have a question regarding that.
Sige, let's
Because after following the EU ASEAN summit, they had a press conference, and President Marcos touched on the EU agreeing with the ASEAN to have a stronger voice when it comes to maritime disputes. So the President Marcos said that I guess the ASEAN, particularly the Philippines, is bolder now in voicing out protests, so to speak, when it comes to maritime disputes. What's your take on this?
Well, both as a leading seafaring nation, which Denmark is, but also as a member of the European Union, I'd say we are very staunch supporters and defenders of freedom of the high seas.
Yes.
And rule of law, including UNCLOS. You can count on Denmark and the European Union to support the Philippines, but also ASEAN in this issue. Now, unfortunately, there are several difficult disputes in this area, and I'd like to use the opportunity to commend the Philippines and Indonesia for coming together and having a legal ruling on this and adhering to that. And you might not know, but Denmark and Canada had a very long-standing issue, which we also resolved peacefully and agreed on. This is the way forward. Sit down, talk through the issues, reach agreement. Caucasians trying to force your point of view or creating a dangerous cause because you are forcing the issue is a very bad thing for all of us, and it has huge below effects. This is the heart of manufacturing of the world. It's the heart. It stops beating, bad things happen to everyone. Everybody's affected. Denmark is affected, Putin is affected, China, US are affected. Nobody escapes that. So we need to be very alert here that there are attempts to import certain country viewpoints through, and that is not the way. So yes, we are going to be very supportive here, and ASEAN can be a very strong, unified force. I know there are attempts, and the Philippines is trying to spearhead some of those attempts to bring ASEAN also closer together, and one of the things that I think is a very good idea is to have this ASEAN code of conduct. It would be very, very helpful.
Yes.
We can help deconflict, we can reduce the risk of unintended incidents and the risk of real direct confrontation and hard incidents, things like that. These things are good. It's the right way to work these issues, and it can be done. So definitely something that we learn to do. Some people interpret this, in a very singular geostrategic way. I think it's a too narrow point of view, because it's really looking at how did we shape our societies, the cooperation between countries, the way we try to integrate our country to the benefit of everyone. And these kind of positive strengthening corporations create more resilience and robustness around what we want to do, also as individual countries, and how we want to grow and bring more resources to our people and through education and welfare. It's very closely linked, and I hope people will understand that I do feel that the Philippine voice within the ASEAN group is very much focused on the found offer the inclusive economic growth towards both the U.S. and China.
Yes.
Let's make the stack of opportunities a lot higher than the drawbacks of increased competition. And by the way, let's make sure it's people competition. And it's good voice to have there. We need that kind of voice and vision in a world which is becoming more difficult.
Yes.
And I don't want to underplay the difficulties because they are there, and everybody's working all kinds of bigger in the future. It may be true. No, I hope not, but we have to be realistic about the way it works. With a more robust international system we can build now, the better we can manage those future challenges in a peaceful way. We avoid slightly linked answer, but it has a multitude of facets.
Does it worry you that there's an arms race going on now because of these issues that you're bringing on? I mean, you were formerly in the teacher time.
It's even 5 years in Afghanistan.
But
there's something about what war looks like.
Yes, but Japan in particular, I think it's revisiting its defense policy, saying that may worry some people in the region, and there are people from our part who see that as are encouraged by it. I mean, what's Europe's view on that? Does it worry you? Maybe do you see that as an escalation, or is there a way maybe to bring the temperature down?
Well, sometimes, unfortunately, maybe you need to be realistic about your situation, and you are not the sole holder of your own security, because that's also defined how your neighbors are acting, what they're doing. And if I turn to my own country, Denmark, we will. The government was very clear when we got just this weekend. It has come up very quickly. We're going to put a lot more money into governments now. So, yes, I think we should worry, because the reason you do that is you feel there is a greater need, and then you react to that and you and I'm not a subscriber, however, to the idea that because we are, your level of safety goes down or the risk of war goes up. That has to do with how strong is the political control over the armed forces. So yes, you may have a situation where the empowered militaristic policy by army, but if you have strong local control, you can also use having a strong military side to deter, make sure that because the other side understands, we're not going. We have that situation in Europe. Of attacking any NATO member at all. They wouldn't even think about it. Not only would it be a very bad idea, but it would also be a very losing idea, because of the strength. And it's a great loss, of course, to Russia that Sweden and Finland now said that they don't join NATO, the strength of NATO and the Northern Flank, and could be commended for that reason, but definitely NATO. So, why are you arming is just as important question as, is this going to strengthen or reduce your security? I do, when I look at the Philippines, I think that the Philippines needs to do more to be able to strengthen its maritime security. I think a lot of the they are right. You need to better understand what's happening in your territorial waters, you have to have federal permission to with you, and you have already embarked on a very ambitious program to extend your coast guard. These things will strengthen your security, not reduce it. So it's not like it has to be easier. So of course, if you have an aggressive militaristic state, and that is a risk. You need to be worried about that. You know, I don't mind saying we are going to keep a very close eye forward-looking when it comes to what weapons we acquire, new technology, whatever. We're going to do that the new threats will happen. Because we will take out